All right, a lesson 11-3B. So what we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to take everything that we learned about completing the square and solving those equations by completing the square, and take everything that we learned about the imaginary numbers and the complex numbers and stuff like that. We're going to put those two lessons together in this one. So we're going to use complex numbers. Our question is, how do you simplify x equals -3 plus or minus the square root of -24? Remember, back in the last unit, we would have stopped at this point and said no real solutions. Well, now that we know that we can actually give an answer for an imaginary solution, we're going to give the imaginary answers. So we're not allowed to say no real solutions anymore. That's lazy. We now know that we can give the imaginary solutions. So we're just going to learn how to reduce problems like this in the end. Okay, so we're just going to do two quick examples, and I think you are good to go after that. So here we go, example 1. We're going to solve x squared minus 18x plus 101 equals 0. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to solve this using the completing the square method. That was from a couple lessons ago. So we're going to start by getting rid of the c value. So we're going to move this over to the other side. So we're going to use our subtraction property of equality. We subtract 101 from both sides. We get x squared minus 18x. I'm going to leave a little bit of a blank here. Equals -101. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a blank here. The reason why I'm leaving the blank is because now we're going to complete the square, which means we're going to have to take this b value over here. We're going to have to divide by 2 and square it. So I'm going to take -18, divide by 2, and square it. So -18 divided by 2 would be -9. And if I square it, I would get 81. So 81 is the number that I will be adding to both sides. Remember, you always add a number to both sides, because when you square it, it's always going to be positive. All right, need a little copy here, just a second. All right, got the coffee, here we go. Now we're going to, on this side, make our perfect square. And on this side, we're going to simplify. So it looks like I'm getting -20 over there. On this side, I have to ask myself, what number did I square? I squared -9. So that means I'm making the perfect square of x minus 9 squared. All right, so now we're at the point where we can take the square root of both sides. I take the square root of this side. I take the square root of this side. Over here, square roots cancel out squares because they're opposite operations. So we get x minus 9. On the other side, anytime I square root both sides, I have to add plus or minus. On the previous unit, we would have stopped right here and got, oh, I got a negative root, therefore there is no real solutions. But we're not going to be lazy like that anymore. We're going to give the imaginary solutions. So I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to add 9 to both sides. And I'm not going to stop here because remember when we had the negatives in the root, we said that we could split that up. We said that we could change, in the previous part, we said that we could change this to root 20 times the square root of -1. So I'm just taking this. It's going to split up into those two parts. And then root 20 can reduce, because that's 4 times 5, and 4 is 2 times 2, so I got a pair of 2's. I got a 5 left over. So I am ready to give my final answer. I get x equals 9 plus or minus. Remember, it's like Friday night for reducing radicals. Couples can go out. So this 2 goes outside. This negative, square root of negative 1 becomes I. And then root 5 is a single. So it's Friday night. Singles have to stay home. So there you go. There's our final answer. 9 plus or minus 2i root 5. Next, number 2. Got the hiccups. All right, last problem. So we got x squared plus 16x plus 5 equals negative 60. I need to take this c value, move it to the other side. So I'll subtract 5 from both sides. I get x squared plus 16x. I'm about to complete the square, so I'm going to leave a blank here so I can fill in the number that I'm going to have to add to both sides. Over here I get negative 65. I need to leave a blank right here. Okay, completing the square, I take the 16, and our process is we cut it in half and square it. 16 divided by 2 is 8, and 8 times 8 is 64. So I'm going to add 64 here, add 64 here. On this side, what number did I square? I squared 8. So this is the perfect square of x plus 8. On the other side, negative 65 plus 64 is negative 1. All right, now to the point that I can take the square root from both sides. On this side, it yields x plus 8. On the other side, do not forget the plus or minus. We got the square root of negative 1. Now we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. Put the negative 8 in front of the plus or minus. So we get negative 8 plus or minus, and then the square root of negative 1 is just I. And there's your final answer. I think you're good to go for that homework assignment. That's all. Bye-bye.